We are less than 48 hours away from the beginning of the Salt Lake City Major, and what was meant to be a simple predictions video for me, well, it's turned into anything but. With news over social media that 5 separate teams have had players get visas rejected so they can't even enter the US, let alone compete at Salt Lake, Ubisoft and Blast released a statement over the last 12 hours with a competitive ruling that relates to these 5 teams. And it's gotten social media and the community at large up in arms. As I mentioned in my previous video, the Wolves had every single player in their roster get their visas rejected, and they were not able to apply for a new one in time. Therefore, the roster and the organization have had to withdraw from Salt Lake. They went on to say that Wolves will receive a portion of the SI points and prize pool equal to 20th in the standings for the final results. And any results from their any results from their forfeit will not be considered for tiebreaker rules, which, given they were unlikely to make it out of phase 1 anyway, is a little bit redundant, but it needed to be said. But the rest of the competitive ruling is what really got the community up in arms, as 4 other teams have had to call in stand-ins for similar reasons. Now, 2 of these teams I don't have an issue with, but there's a little bit more going on for it than that. 5 Fears coach Archer was not able to attend Salt Lake because of the situation in his home country in Ukraine. To my understanding, he is actually not eligible to leave the country due to the laws in place in his own country while the war in Ukraine is still going on. So stand-in coach Phoenix has been brought in to stand behind the boys when they're playing. This was actually put in place by the team ahead of time, as this eventuality may actually occur. And it has been activated. Phoenix is now going to be standing behind the boys. That I do not have an issue with. In fact, that's actually kind of smart from 5 Fears. It's actually really forward-thinking for this. The other one I do not have an issue with is guards not being able to attend, but that is more down to personal reasons rather than visa issues we're being led to believe. So his twin brother Guards is coming in to take his place. This again I do not have an issue with, although it does kind of suck for Dove as he was not able to compete, but that was more down to personal reasons rather than visa related issues. So again, fair play for that one. But it's the other 2 teams where I take issue with. Wildcard and EDG. EDG, we kind of already knew was going to happen because Direction had his visa rejected and therefore he was not able to attend. That in itself is fine. But it's his stand-in and the fact that Ubisoft approved this, that's kind of where things really start to kick off. And Wildcard's stand-in is also what really is starting to drive people over the edge. Let's start with EDG stand-in because that is the more prevalent situation, as EDG will be competing in the play-ins in less than 2 days at time of recording. Team Secret from the EML have agreed to loan out Noah to EDG for the duration of the major. It has been confirmed that Team Secret agreed to this. What? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind Nuaz as a player. He is a great player, but when you come over from a region as competitive as the EML to a brand new temporary region in the CNL, you have to wonder about balancing issues, because while Direction is their best player, and it does kind of make sense that Noah is brought in to take his place as what I think is the best rated player on Team Secret, so it is 1-for-1 in terms of ranking within the team. Direction is a completely different player to Noah. More importantly, we don't know what language EDG will be coming in. So it could be Mandarin, it could be English, or the fact that Noah's going to need a translator. Even if we take the language issue out of the equation, which is important that we don't overall, it still has led the community to question whether or not this is balanced properly. And people have even started taking the mickey out of this on social media, with even Bappin, who jokingly said that he was unable to play and specifically requested JB92 from Team Liquid Alienware to stand in for his place. People are rightly up in arms about this, especially when Adrian from Wildcard also got his visa rejected, and Hot and Cold from M80 is coming in to take his place. This, I think, is the more controversial one because it is basically coming in from the exact same region, and they actually competed against each other. Now, M80 is not competing at Salt Lake And at the time of recording, Hot and Cold is currently on M80's bench. So while he is technically allowed to play according to the rules, which I'll get to in a second, it still leads me to question, similar to what's happening with Noah, the balance of everything. Like, we don't know how good Adrian is compared to Hot and Cold, or if they're going to play the exact same. More importantly, Spiker is already the IGL for Wildcard. So when you bring in a second IGL, there's going to be some situations coming into play. Now, Wildcard actually has a bit of a leeway, because Blast have said that if, and this also applies to EDG as well, if Direction and Adrian can get their visas sorted out in time, and they can get into Soul Lake before the Swiss phase begins, so this will be about Sunday afternoon my time, then they can come back into the team. So it's not a complete situation. So it's not a situation where they are in for the entire tournament. Ubisoft and Blast have given all teams affected an opportunity for their regular players to come back into the starting five if they can make it back by the time Swiss phase comes in. We know that Archer's not coming in because of the situation regarding the war in Ukraine again, so Phoenix is in there to take his place. Dover's unlikely to come back in, so Guards is in there for the entire time. It's more EDG and Wildcard where this is affected. So if Direction can get his visa reapplied and accepted, and he's able to get into the country just before Swiss phase begins, and EDG actually make it out of the play-ins to begin with, then he can step back in. Same applies for Adrian and Wildcard. But Wildcard have been given a little bit of leeway because they're already in Swiss phase. Now, before people yell at me saying, you don't know the rules, you blah, 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 I read through that portion of the rulebook twice, and people smarter than me have actually torn through this word by word. Note, there is nothing in the rules that prevents teams from bringing in any stand-in they want, assuming coaches and support staff do not accept being able to stand in for whatever reason they want. So the situation with coaches and support staff and also substitutes not being able or not wanting to step in and take the place of the rejected player, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because to my knowledge, in various other esports, the coach has to step in. And we've had situations like this in the past where coaches have stepped in. I mean, need I remind you of Dizzle back in 2020 for Fnatic? That was a game and a half from the man. There was actually a rule in place in previous versions of the global rulebook where players from opposition teams, i.e. teams that have competed from them i.e. teams that have competed against them in the regional league, similar to what's happening with Wildcard and Hot and Cold, they actually were not able to sign on for that team, even as a stand-in. If that rule was still in place, then Hot and Cold would not be playing for Wildcard during Salt Lake. So, part of me wonders why they got rid of that rule in the first place. I think it's actually a fair rule because it prevents a potential conflict of interest. So, again, that's just me personally. And for anyone who thinks that I'm making this up, give me 2 seconds. I actually had this planned out. Okay, here we go. So this is the rule I'm talking about in question. So there's 2 parts of this rule. If a team is unable to have 5 players competing in a particular match of Blast R6, including calling their substitute, the team can request to have another one of their team members' their team staff members, or their coach replacing the unavailable player. This generally is usually what happens with a lot of different esports. I think this has happened in Rainbow Six as well. Again, I refer back to the Disgod game. But this is the particular rule in question that's getting a lot of people up in arms and say that they need to be amended for clarity's sake. If a team is unable to have 5 players competing, including calling in a substitute, a coach, or other support staff, if a team is unable to have 5 players competing, including calling a substitute, coach, or other support staff, accepting to step in, keyword there, then the team can exceptionally request to play with a stand-in player. A stand-in is a player exceptionally authorized to compete with the team despite not being registered with the team in question for a limited time, in this particular case, throughout the duration of Salt Lake. This right here is where people are kind of getting up in arms. Coaches, players, community. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that this rule exists for this specific reason. I'm glad it is in place because North America has been particularly stringent with the visa applications in the last few years. Although Ubisoft and Blast accepting an event in the United States under this current administration is beyond me, but that's the reality we now inhabit. This whole situation is just a mess. Don't get me wrong, as I said before, I'm happy that the rule exists, and I'm happy that teams can call in stand-ins where necessary. But there has to be a cleaner solution. There has to be something a little bit more elegant. I think Ubisoft and Blast need to bring back the rule that you can't call in players from opposition teams you played in during that previous stage, or you competed against during the regular season. So the situation with Hot and Cold and Wildcard should not come into play. And I want to make this clear. I'm not having to go at Wildcard. I'm not having to go at Hot and Cold. I'm not having to go at EDG. I'm not having to go at Noah. I'm not having to go at any team or player, or in Fearx's, or in Firefield's case, coach. I'm not having to go at any team or players that are affected by the visa situation happening at Salt Lake right now. The ruling from Blast is just so strange and bizarre. Like, I don't particularly get it. Like I said, I think the previous rule that you can't have stand-in players from competing teams within that region, that I think needs to come back. Or another way, bring in players that are free agents. Like, there are plenty of players in North America, at least, that could play for Wildcard because the player pool in Tier 2 and Extended Tier 1 is pretty damn big. So it kind of boggles the mind that Wildcard are not employing anyone in that particular pool. Although I suspect there's something a little bit more going on with the Hot and Cold situation. But with the doom and gloom out of the way, let us get on to the real purpose of this video, predictions for Phase 1. Alright, so for playing predictions, we're going to be doing this via Project Prisma's simulator. How this works is every team here is already have their brackets in place. This is the bracket that's actually going to be taking part in Salt Lake City. And you can actually kind of predict how the bracket is going to go and who's going to qualify for the next phase, so on and so forth. The placeholders for the teams competing already will be, they're already here, but you can chop and change as you will. So say, for example, if Wolves were able to compete, so they would, and if they do somehow beat the Wolves, I can't switch that, that's okay. So let's say, for example, Daystar is able to get through and compete and qualify for Salt Lake, qualify for Phase 2. That will change automatically, so that's just kind of a little fun tidbit that you have in place there. Wolves, that's already there, so that's fine. So, sorry, I just gotta resettle this, so to speak. So, like I said before, Wolves have had to withdraw from Salt Lake City, so their matches will be forfeited. So, Los already goes through to the second round of the upper bracket, and the loser of Enterprise and EDG will automatically go through to the second round of the lower bracket. So, these two and a bit teams get free passes already. But speaking of EDG, Enterprise versus EDG is the first match that's actually going to be played. So Noah is a great player, and EDG have annoyingly picked well for their sub. I still think because of the host of I still think for the host of problems they've had in the lead up to Salt Lake, their setup, their prep's been disrupted. Their best players no longer able to compete. Enterprise should take this rather cleanly. I don't like being negative to teams, but the situation regarding EDG is just straight up rough. And same goes for Wolves as well. I really want to see how they did internationally. Unfortunately, we're not going to see the Wolves, and EDG are already compromised, so that's not going to be an easy thing for them. So unfortunately, EDG will lose their first BO3, will lose their BO1, and they will go straight from Phase 1, from Round 1 into Round 2 of the lower bracket. But as you can see, assuming the bracket holds in place, it's not going to get easy for them. Falcons v Daystar. That's the next round. I mean, hypothetically, Team Falcons should already be in Phase 2 to begin with. So the fact that they're here is already nuts. And they're coming up against the second best team in Asia. Uh, in my heart of hearts, I really want Daystar to show up Team Falcons. They can do it. Team Falcons have been showed up before. But the reality is, it's coughing baby nuclear bomb situation. So unfortunately, as much as I really want to, Team Falcons take out Daystar and they move on to the second round of the upper bracket. And unfortunately, same applies for Shopify Rebellion and 4am. Again, coughing baby, hydrogen bomb. Rebellion should be competing quite comfortably against Team Falcons in the second round of the upper bracket. Same situation. They really should be in the second phase already, but the fact that they're not just makes this a little more interesting. So second round of the upper bracket. Lowe's v Enterprise. This is where this is where the rubber meets the road for Enterprise, really. Because they were fantastic domestically with some slight changes, and they're going to get a very good warm-up against EDG. But this is Brazil versus Oceania. And I will admit, we have seen Oceanic teams do surprisingly well against APAC against Brazilian teams. Take a look at the previous EP roster against Furia during Munich. And you know what? I think Enterprise are just good enough to get over the line against Los. It is going to be close. It is going to require overtime in at least one map. But I think EP actually do take out Los. But it's not going to be an easy task for them. They really need to be switched on from jump. Falcons v Rebellion. The home soil buff should work in Rebellion's favor, and as entertaining as it would be to see Rebellion beat Team Falcons, that whole Falcons roster, Doom included, is just way too good. Again, both of these teams should be in Phase 2 already, and I think we will see them both in Phase 2 anyway, but the fact that they're starting here is just straight up nuts. We don't need to talk about Wolves EDG because that's been taken care of already. Daystar v 4am. The placeholder has 4am beating Daystar, but I'm actually going to go for a bit of a smoky pick. I'm going to say Daystar beat 4am. They have a little bit more experience internationally compared to 4am. Even Bin isn't, even though Bin is a new player to international Siege, he's still good enough and actually keeping up with the rest of the team. So I think Daystar have just got enough in the tank to get over 4am. Rebellion v EDG. This one should be a no-brainer. I think it should be Rebellion taking out EDG. Stand-in, Noah aside, the Rebellion roster is just way too good, let's be honest. Lowe's v Daystar. This is the tough one. I think it's a similar situation to Enterprise Lowe's. We've seen APAC teams do well against Brazilian squads. This is I think is the hardest map. I think is the hardest match of Phase 1. Conventional wisdom would say Lowe's take the match straight up. It won't be close, but they'll take it. That's conventional wisdom. But Daystar have this really weird habit of defying expectation and defying convention. It's really a really annoying habit, but I think it's actually going to do him well in this one. So, the problem is my predictions on the Ubisoft website would say otherwise, and I'm actually going to change that in just a second. But oh god. Fuck it. Heart of hearts. This team, Daystar have been together longer. They've been really good at defying expectation. They have international experience now, whereas a lot of Lowe's don't really have a lot of that, with the exception of, I think, Dash and a couple of other in the team as well. They haven't been together long enough. Yeah, Daystar. It's close. It is going to be very close. I reckon that final map is going to go to overtime. But that being said, it is kind of be dependent on how this match for Daystar goes. If it turns into a marathon, it's going to be tough for them. If it turns out to be a cakewalk, that's going to be a very good warm-up. But even so, we have seen what a mental drain can do with these guys. They're going to be the only one playing in the lower bracket, so they're only going to get really an hour rest. Actually, no, they're going to get about 3 hour rest because I keep forgetting it's a BO3. So it should be enough for them to be able to fortify themselves, but Los will be coming into this cold, so to speak. They've only been able to play the 2 matches as opposed to Daystar's 3 at this point. this will be Los' second game as opposed to Daystar's third. Wolves having to withdraw from Salt Lake is really screwing over the setup and prep for a lot of these teams, which is unfair for the for the Wolves because they worked their butts off to get here and they're not able to compete because of the visa situation. It's just not fair. So here's who I think will qualify for Phase 2 of the Salt Lake City Major: Enterprise, Team Falcon in the upper bracket, Rebellion, and Daystar in the lower bracket. Now, if you want to follow along with the rest of the major as well, what you can do is the simulator for Project Prisma has every phase in the major that you can play around with. So you can do a situation where you can have a go at mucking around with the swisse phase, and you can kind of predict who will qualify and who will get eliminated at this point. And if you really want to get fun, you can predict who's going to win it outright. If you really want to do it now, I think you're nuts. But hey, if you do you, I think we'll all have to be a little bit nuts in this day and age. For statisticians out there, you can play around with, you can join a fantasy, you can make your own fantasy team and compete against the rest of the people who are competing as well. Here's my team once it loads up because my internet is an absolute joke. You have to bear with me. So if you want to have a little bit of fun, you can go around and you can pick your own team and your coach as well as your IGL, and you can go around and you can compete against a lot of different players and groups as well. If you have your own sub league or if you want to make your own, you can play there as well. For your statisticians out there, you can look at player stats and team stats for a lot of different players and all the coaches as well. PR also started playing around with being a bit of a news channel as well, which is where we saw a lot of the new breaking news regarding the visa situations for the teams that were affected, who I've covered previously. You can get integrated with your Discord as well, which is great there. So if you want to have a little bit of fun playing around with Project Prisma, the simulator, the fantasy league as well, go ahead. It is a lot of fun there. They didn't say my predictions, but it doesn't matter. It's saved anyway. And speaking of predictions, you've got a little bit of time left. So if you want to, you can go ahead and go to Ubisoft's website and begin your own, make your own predictions as to who's going to make it in the various phases of the major. I need to quickly change that to Daystar because I'm a masochist and I'm sucking in way too much copium these days. So if you want, you can sort of predict who, if you haven't done this already, go ahead and go to the predictions tab in the Ubisoft 6 website. What you can do, what you win there, if you do well, if you get enough predictions correct, you can win a various amount of alpha packs that you can redeem once the major ends and they go hand it out. If you do well enough, you can get an exclusive Kamar skin for the. You can get an exclusive major skin for the Kamar's marksman rifle. Some of these exclusive major skins, by the way, are really, really good. And if you're really good at what you do, you can get a free battle pass for next season as well. So I highly recommend giving this a go if you haven't already. My previous record hasn't been great, and I'm not expecting this to be any better. I think the best I was able to do for the 6th Invitational was actually the exclusive skin, which I can't remember what it looked like. If you haven't already, do so now. You've got a little over a day to get that sorted out at the time of recording. By the time this is edited and dropped, you'll probably have about 24 hours to get it done. So if you haven't already, you don't have a lot of time. All in all, this is going to be a pretty interesting major given the situations with the various teams that have been affected by the visa situation, the CNL teams in particular. It's going to throw a lot of predictions for a lot of teams out of whack because of this. Yeah, I just hope that Ubisoft and Blast learn their lesson going forward and they are really careful about where they host events for next season. Thankfully, we're not going back to North America for the rest of the year. We're going to be going to Japan for November and back to Brazil for the 6th Invitational. So hopefully we won't have as many issues going forward, but we will see. I'm not going to be doing predictions for Phase 2, at least in this format, because it's way too short of a turnaround, because we're going to go straight into Phase 2 after Phase 1 ends. So the day phase 1 ends, which is the 10th for the 10th, I think. Sorry, the 9th, I should say. The 9th. It'll start on the 10th, so it'll start on Mother's Day. So it's too short a turnaround for me to be able to actually do a proper predictions video for phase 2. And given just how big that phase is going to be, I'm just not going to have the time. So I will be back for a predictions video for phase 3 because we actually do get a day's gap. So that's going to give me time to look at the bracket, who's going to win, and who's going to actually take the tournament outright. So, yeah, if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to this channel, drop your comments below as to your thoughts on what's going on with the CNL and the visa situation and who you think is going to qualify for the Swisse phase out of phase 1. Yeah, I apologize for this impromptu video. This was not scripted in any way, so this is kind of me just ranting a little bit. This is a lot of improv work on my end, so I apologize if it wasn't the smoothest in the world, but you can do what you have to do in order to get the content out. Join me for the phase 3 predictions, which will be sometime after phase 2 ends, but before phase 3 begins. So keep an eye out on that. Keep an eye on my social media because I will be doing predictions for each round of the Swisse phase when that rolls around. So assuming that I'm actually awake during that time, yay for being in Western Australia when the rest of the major is, yay for being in Western Australia when the major is taking place in Western North America. Ouch. Until next time, operators, this is your resident Silver Wolf signing off.